Hello, and you're welcome to an introduction to Advanced Audit and Assurance with myself, Michael Donnelly, from accountancyschool.ie. Advanced Audit and Assurance, previously known as P7, is one of the four options that you have a choice to do, having completed F1 to F9, the fundamental papers. The four choices that are available, and I'm using the older titles, P4, P5, P6 and P7, follow on directly from similar type subjects which would have been covered at the fundamental level. So as you can see from the slide there, P4 follows on from F9, which would have been the financial management paper, P6 from F6, the taxation paper, P5 from F5, the performance management paper, and P7 follows on from both F8 and P2, which would have been the auditing paper at F8 and the financial reporting paper at P2, now referred to as the strategic business reporting paper. The handiest way to review this would be, again, to get an idea as to which area of the syllabus you particularly enjoyed on each of the subjects available. So if you were more leaning towards the computational question, then F9 and on to P4 would be perhaps the area that you'd need to consider, because there's quite a bit of computation. Likewise, if you enjoyed taxation, maybe have a look at some of the papers from P6 and get an indication as to whether you think that type of material might suit you, or maybe it might be even something that would be applicable to your work. Likewise, if P4 or if F5 was something that you enjoyed from the financial management point of view, maybe P5 is something that you would consider taking as one of the options. In the case of P7, it's primarily a theoretical based paper, but it does take likewise the theory and the computational elements which you would have covered on the P2 syllabus. So if one is considering doing the advanced auditing paper, you would want to be familiar with what was on the F8 syllabus, and again, be familiar with the general area of auditing and the requirements of auditors and so on and so forth. And again, have covered the accounting standards in P2 of the strategic business reporting paper. The paper itself, the advanced audit and assurance paper, as we say, feeds from what was the F8 paper, the audit and assurance paper. And likewise, I'm again referring to the older titles on this. P1 and P3 have now been taken over with Strategic Business Leader. But by the time you're ready now to go along and do P7 or Advanced Audit and Assurance, you've probably come through the P1 and P3 stream. So those papers will likewise find some repetition within P7. But more importantly, the contents of P2, the Strategic Business Reporting paper, or corporate reporting as it used to be called, is definitely a requirement for P7. To give yourself a good grounding in the accounting standards, the Advanced Audit and Assurance Examiner has continuously referred to the fact that she is requiring students sitting the advanced auditing paper to have a core knowledge of the accounting standards. And all of the accounting standards which are examined at P2 or Strategic Business Reporting are all examinable on the P7 paper. So it stands to reason that if one is to audit a set of financial statements which have been drawn up in accordance with the accounting standards, obviously a knowledge of those accounting standards is required before you can make a decision as to whether they've been applied correctly or not. So for that reason, a core in-depth knowledge of the accounting standards at P2 is required. It would be, I would say, not doing yourself a great favour to attempt the advanced audit having not done the P2 paper. So I would suggest that you either study it parallel with P7, in other words, do your corporate reporting and your advanced auditing paper, do them together, or else have your corporate reporting paper completed. By just doing the F7 paper, you won't cover the required level of accounting standards which are examinable on the P7 paper. The advanced audit paper itself is broken into two sections, Section A and Section B. Like the other option papers, the change has now been brought about from September 18 onwards, whereby there will be no choice of question on the paper. Each question on the paper will be compulsory. There are 3 questions. The first question is the full question of Section A. So Section A has but one question and it's compulsory. It's half the paper, it's made up of 50 marks. And effectively what they're trying to do here is replicate a real-life audit scenario where you're furnished with financial statement extracts, perhaps working papers, and indeed a set of analytical results. So you could get a batch of ratios, you could have any kind of background knowledge to a particular company. With that, you'll be expected to look at primarily areas of risk. So we're looking here about business risks, the area that the company actually operates in, what type of external factors are going to have an impact on the ongoing business that's being examined. Audit risk, the possibility that we might give an incorrect opinion, and what do we need to look at from the point of view of audit. And the risk of material misstatement. Now, where the risk of material misstatement is going to focus is the possibility that there may well be some material irregularities within the financial statements. And obviously, if an incorrect application of the accounting standards is such that that is going to bring about a material misstatement, without the knowledge of the accounting standards, you won't be able to determine whether that figure that's shown is correct or not. Okay, so that's really where your accounting knowledge and the knowledge of the accounting standards comes into place. There's a heavy emphasis on risk, and that's always been the case. Okay, we're saying there the practical audit procedures are required. It's very much a case of what would you do. So you just need to think in the real world and say, well, in this scenario, what would I do? What could I do to gather evidence? What can I do to confirm that a figure is free from material misstatement? Okay. Ethics in other areas may also be included in that part of the paper. By making each question compulsory, there's not going to be any option of, question spotting or omitting any part of the syllabus. So it's fair game for everything in the advanced audit and assurance paper. So in the same way as something like practice management or whatever could be brought in quite a lot of the past questions, we've seen that the examiner has gone down the road of incorporating an ethics element in this section too. I also refer here to a question type which is referred to as comment on matters. Now, comment on matters type questions again refer back to scenarios which have been dealt with in a given situation. You then need to comment on whether the item has been dealt with correctly or whether they need to go back and revise the way in which the item has been recorded in the financial statements. And again, if it's in the financial statements, it's going to be recorded in line with the accounting standards. So if your knowledge of the accounting standards is somewhat wanting, this question again is going to catch you out. If we've done section 1 or section A with question 1, which is 50 marks, section B has two questions in there. Okay, so section B is worth 50 marks, and again it covers areas traditionally on ethics and professional issues, and by that you're talking about things like practice management, you're talking about forensic issues, a lot of issues perhaps which definitely wouldn't have been dealt with on the F8 paper. So if one was of the opinion that you might be able to just tackle the advanced audit and assurance paper with the auditing knowledge that you've gained on F8, you'll be found out in section B. The accounting standards again are more than likely going to appear in section B. We'll be looking at evidence, the gathering of it, the recording of it, and so on and so forth. And there will be a very heavy emphasis on audit reporting. Okay, if you think of it, the end result of the audit process will be the report which is going to be put together at the end by the auditor. And this report, which is going to communicate to the shareholders, if that's going to be the document in which the opinion of the auditor is going to be addressed, obviously there's going to be a heavy emphasis on that in the advanced audit and assurance paper. Again, you could find yourself addressing a comment on matters type question. If you haven't already come across it in section A, it'll more than likely make an appearance in section B. And the other services, those other services, again, they refer to things which are definitely what I call pure advanced audit and assurance type issues, such as forensic auditing, social and environmental issues, any other kind of current issues within the audit environment. Topical issues will be current issues, and the examiner has traditionally either issued an article online on accaglobal.com, or indeed within the current auditing environment there may be something which comes to our attention, and if that's the case, we're continuously keeping an eye out to see what's happening in the world of auditing. Again, there's just a brief overview here on the likes of those comment on matters, and again, materiality, accounting issues, material misstatements, and even the implications on the audit report. Because again, if the audit report is something where you issue an opinion to say these financial statements show a true and fair view, in order to do that, it has to comply with those accounting standards, and that's why the accounting issues, the risk of material misstatements, they're all going to culminate in a particular or potential emphasis of the audit report. Evidence you would expect to find on the review of the file. So what would you expect to see in a file, and if it's not there, obviously the quality control of the audit process is something which needs to be reviewed, and you now as audit manager or somebody at a higher level within the audit process for the advanced audit and assurance paper would need to be able to indicate that to the examiner. There'll obviously be an ethics emphasis here, and practical applications of some knowledge will be given to some scenario, and other professional issues will be given as well. You don't have to have a background in auditing to sit the advanced audit and assurance paper. In actual fact, sometimes it can be an advantage if you don't, because you can sometimes take perhaps particular processes or procedures that you might have seen in practice, which may not be applicable in a particular question. So you will not be at a disadvantage by not having a background in auditing. Okay, there will be more than enough theory covered to get you through the advanced auditing and assurance paper. The second question on section B deals with the final stages of the audit, and you will be guaranteed that there will be a question there on the audit report, the various types of modification or qualification that might appear in that report, and any other issues post-audit, such as finalisation and so on and so forth. They're all examinable at that section too. Over 85% of the material has already been covered in earlier papers, so you would have seen a lot of this at your earlier auditing studies in the likes of F8, or if you covered a degree which gave you an exemption from perhaps F1 through to F9, you would have covered that material. As we've stated already, it would certainly be strongly advised that you're either presently studying the Strategic Business Reporting, formerly P2 paper, or perhaps you've done that already. It is possible to sit P7 without doing it, but you're doing yourself a decided disadvantage because the knowledge which is required in P7 takes all the P2 knowledge as being previously covered. It will require that you have a bit of knowledge on a lot of matters. Now, what I mean by that is, if one was sitting the Strategic Business Reporting paper, you might be asked to go along, for example, to do a calculation on something like a share-based payments scenario. Okay, from the P7 point of view, we may not have to do the computational side of it, but we should be able to interpret and be able to be aware of any particular material misstatement which is evident in a set of financial statements. In the same way, for something as commonly asked as consolidation, because on the advanced audit and assurance paper, we're auditing not alone standalone companies, but also groups, which could include a foreign subsidiary. You won't be asked, obviously, to carry out the consolidation calculations, but you may be asked to interpret or comment on matters you would consider, given an extract from a set of financial statements. In the exam, you will need to write a little about a lot of things. This is very true. And as a marker of the P7 exam, I can tell you that candidates who do not cover a depth of knowledge and cannot give a solution which covers the volume required to score well will find it very difficult to get through P7. So you do need to write quite a bit about a lot of things. Okay. The key to passing is completing homework from the first lecture. It's all about practice. If you get your practice in and you're familiar with the way in which the question is going to be asked, and more importantly, getting a good exam technique so that when you get into the question, you know straight away, this is what I need to do to score the marks. The marking matrix is very straightforward, okay? And as somebody who's applying it now for each of the 4 sittings to 250, 300 scripts, I can tell you that it's something which can be learned and can be applied quite easily, okay? But again, it's a practice item. There is a requirement if you do wish to practice as a registered auditor within the UK and or Ireland, you do have to obtain an audit qualification, and for that you will have to sit the P2 UK or Irish variant and the P7 Irish variant. The default position is that you would take the Advanced Audit and Assurance International paper, but if you choose or would want to keep the option of having an auditing practicing certificate, then you're going to have to choose the Irish variant. All UK, Irish and UK professional bodies are governed by the requirements of the Statutory Audit Directive, and in order to comply with that, again, you're going to have to sit the Irish variant. There are some subtle changes which are required, but the core syllabus is identical. There's a small additional area of syllabus which is just purely the Irish variant, and we will cover that within the course. Okay. Just remember, when you are making your application, if you do have to go down the road of making a choice between the UK or the Irish or the international or Irish variant, should you in the future need a practicing certificate for auditing, be sure and take the Irish variant. That's the end of our presentation for P7. Again, from the very start, you would have seen my contact details. It's Michael Donnelly, michael.donnelly@accountancyschool.ie. And should you have any queries or questions with regards to advanced audit and assurance for the forthcoming or indeed any future sitting of the paper within Accountancy School, don't hesitate to drop me a mail or contact the college directly. Thank you.